Voaden.
Thank you, Mr Vickers. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today, and I'd like to thank my honourable friend, the member for St Ives, for bringing this important debate, and for other members for their informed contributions. So in summing up, for the Liberal Democrats, I'd like to echo some of the points made and consider the government's approach to negotiations with the EU, and I would also like to thank the Minister for his visit to Brixham, which he made straight after the election, and for the interest he takes in the industry. I would agree with the member for Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes that we do need to negotiate with a clear head and try not to allow the Brexit psychodrama to colour our positioning too much as we go into those negotiations. However, I think it's fair to point out that our fishing communities were badly let down by the previous Conservative government, who had spent years promising that Brexit would be a boon for British fishers, yet perhaps in contrast to the member for Dumfries and Galloway, I think. In Brixham, in my constituency in South Devon, the fishers there clearly feel very betrayed by former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who actually toured the harbour there, promising them the earth, and then cast them adrift at the 11th hour, giving EU vessels virtually the same rights that they had under the Common Fisheries Policy, while burdening our own vessels with a millstone of veterinary certificates and border checks if they want to export their fish to the biggest market they have in the EU, particularly our shellfish exporters, who have been incredibly badly affected by the red tape they now find themselves tied up in. The National Federation of Fishermen's Organisations described the post-Brexit TCA as a near-complete capitulation to the demands of the EU. And the former government's botched deal has undoubtedly harmed the UK fishing industry and caused great uncertainty, which only increases now as the end of the transfer period approaches. But it's not just fishers, as we've heard, who are affected by all of this. It's the entire supply chain and the infrastructure that keeps our coastal communities vibrant. So the Liberal Democrats hope that the current government is entering into negotiations with our valuable fishing industry uppermost in its mind. One tangible benefit that the industry had post-Brexit was the ability of the UK to develop its own fisheries management measures, an evidence-led process which is intended to be focused on long-term environmental, economic and social sustainability, and very different to the Common Fisheries Policy, which still remains top-down, bureaucratic and riven by political compromise, as many members have said. However, it is vital that real-world scientific data is incorporated swiftly into stock management decisions to reflect what is actually happening on the ground, or rather in the sea. The Liberal Democrats believe there is a real issue in relation to data-deficient stocks, which is impacting the sustainability of fishing quotas. Bycatch rules are leading to fish being thrown back into the sea that will not survive, making a nonsense of sustainability objectives and impacting the livelihood of UK fishers who could land those fish. Small species of fish which could be caught and offer economic benefit are not properly accounted for within the quotas. So we believe the government must consider appropriate IC's alternative advice scenarios which deliver similar results for stock sustainability to ensure that the socio-economics have also been carefully considered. So take Pollack, for instance. A formal review by ICs, as my honourable friend has said. The formal review is due in June 2025. This advice must be fed quickly into management decisions. And currently we also have no management in place for the recreational fleet, which the Cornish Fish Producers Organisation estimates to be up to 50% of the total pollock catch. So the zero tax for pollock is severely impacting the under-10 fleet that rely heavily on this stock, and catch data for commercial and recreational sectors shows that the under-10 metre fleet is responsible for the lowest catches of pollock and impact on stock, yet it's this sector that is impacted most by the current approach to management. So I echo my honourable friend's call to the Minister to commit to introducing any new management of the pollock stock with immediate effect upon publication of the advice, and not to wait until January 2026. And will he look again at recreational catch limits? Anecdotal evidence would suggest substantial tonnage of fish being caught by boats claiming to be recreational, even those with zero total allowable catch, such as pollock. We also need to look again at bluefin tuna catch limits, a species that is now becoming more abundant in our waters and, as we've heard, regularly being caught by recreational anglers as well. Of concern to the South West Fish Producer Organisation members and those operating in and around Brixham is the impact of recent annual quota negotiations on the highly valuable sole fishery in the Western Channel, which has been cut every year for the past 3 years. This year it was cut by 3%, despite the latest encouraging ICES advice identifying no immediate issues with the stock. And this decision stemmed from a management decision made in 2023 as opposed to the concerns about the stock itself. So these catch limits are unfairly targeting the inshore fleet of smaller boats. As we've heard, super trawlers represent just 4% of UK fishing boats, but account for 75% of all fish landed, whereas the under 10-metre fleet account for just 1% of all fish landed. The Liberal Democrats are committed to ensuring that sustainability is at the heart of our post-Brexit strategy on fisheries by reforming the fishing quota allocation system to reward the most sustainable fleet and ensuring all catch limits are set at sustainable levels. And I think the example of Geoff Hicks in the Scillies shows how imbalanced the regulations are in an industry that includes such a wide variance in vessel size and activity. We would radically overhaul how our quotas are allocated, prioritising support for SMEs, revitalising local economies and better protecting our seas from environmental harm. Now, in 2018, when Shadow Environment Secretary Sue Hayman MP said ministers needed to take urgent action to use the powers that they have domestically to redistribute fishing quota to deliver a fairer deal for smaller boats. Excuse me. Now that Baroness Hayman is a DEFRA minister, is the government in favour still of redistributing quotas to support smaller boats? We urge the government to consider the rollout of a multi-year quota system, which would enable the industry to plan into the future rather than adhere to the current annual cliff edge system. This would provide certainty for fishermen and the industry and support the recovery for most of the fishing stock. However, we must also ensure that some flexibility is built into that arrangement, as climate change is affecting fish stocks, and we can see from the arrival of more bluefin tuna in our waters that things are changing, and it's vital that the industry is able to review catch limits as the marine environment changes. So EU vessels still have free access to UK waters in the 6 to 12 nautical mile zone, whereas we don't have the same in the 6 to 12 mile zone in EU waters. And the NFFO has described this distribution as radically inequitable, and I'm sure we would all agree with that. Under proposals published last week, we've heard the EU's €150 billion defence fund will only consider purchasing British weapons if the Prime Minister signs a security pact with Brussels, something France has tied to fishing rights. And the President of the European Council has said the EU will not let the question of fishing rights derail a pact with the UK on security and defence. I think most honourable members contributing today have echoed that we should not allow the defence of Europe and the security of our nation to be negotiated against the fishing industry. Thank my honourable friend. Can the Minister confirm that he will go out to bat as strongly for our own fishing fleet in the negotiations as it looks like the French are going to do? And if not, can he commit that he will at least try and get some of the red tape on exports to the EU removed? The Labour General Election Manifesto said we will seek to negotiate a veterinary agreement to prevent unnecessary border checks. But almost 9 months later, British exporters have passed the milestone of 1 million export health certificates issued since Brexit, every one of them representing time and money lost by British fishers and farmers. So can the Minister assure our hard-working constituents that the deal for 2026 and beyond will include an end to the requirement for export health certificates so that whatever our fishers are able to catch, they can sell to the widest possible market at the best possible price? Mr Vickers, food security is national security. Protecting, promoting and supporting our fishing industry is vital to this security. And I look forward to hearing the Minister's response to some of the questions raised and the points made here today. Thank you.
Shadow Minister Dr Neil Hudson.